On January 23, 2025, a U.S. federal judge in the state of Washington temporarily blocked President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. Now, under Trump's proposed executive order, a child born in the U.S. would no longer automatically be a U.S. citizen unless at least one of their parents was either a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident at the time of the child's birth. In particular, a child born to a mother who was out of status or in the U.S. on a temporary non-immigrant visa would not be a U.S. citizen under this executive order unless the father was already a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident when the child was born. Now, the judge was extremely skeptical about the legitimacy of this executive order and was quoted as saying that, and I quote, "I have been on the bench for over 4 decades and I can't remember another case whether the question presented was as clear," meaning it's so clear that this was unconstitutional. The judge further asked the lawyers for Trump, well, where were the lawyers when the decision was made to sign that executive order, and that it boggled his mind that a member of the bar would believe such an executive order was constitutional. So in the temporary restraining order, the court even stated that, and I quote, "there is a strong likelihood that the plaintiffs," meaning the states challenging this executive order, "the plaintiffs will succeed on the merits of their claims that the executive order violates the 14th Amendment and the Immigration and Nationality Act." Now, by way of background, this case was one of several lawsuits filed by various states throughout the country and by various groups such as the ACLU challenging Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. In this case, the judge set another hearing for February 5. Therefore, for now, children born in the U.S. will still be considered U.S. citizens. And I think that given the strong language and the comments by this judge, it is highly likely that he will find this executive order to be unconstitutional and void. Okay, so now, what's going to happen next? I think that the case would, of course, be appealed to the Court of Appeal, but ultimately, it's going to be presented to the Supreme Court for an ultimate or final decision. It's going to have to be the U.S. Supreme Court that will ultimately have to decide this case and interpret or reinterpret the meaning of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which states, and I quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside." The issue of this executive order is the meaning of that phrase, "subject to the jurisdiction thereof." Now, in a previous video I posted the day that Trump issued his executive order, I discussed and I explained the history and background behind this phrase, and I do invite you to go back on my channel and watch that video for more details. In fact, in 1898, we're talking about 125 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court decided the issue of birthright citizenship in the case entitled United States versus Wong Kim Ark, where the Supreme Court stated, and I quote, "A child born in the United States of parents of Chinese descent," and it does not have to be Chinese, it can be Filipino, it can be Russian, Armenian, whatever, but a child born of non-U.S. citizens, "who at the time of his birth are subjects of the Emperor of China, but have a permanent domicile and residence in the United States, and are there carrying on business and are not employed in any diplomatic or official capacity under the Emperor of China, automatically became a U.S. citizen at birth." Okay, but here's what I think Trump and his attorneys will argue in front of the Supreme Court. And this is important. The Wong Kim R case, they're going to say, is different from his executive order and therefore should not apply to his executive order because the parents in that case had a permanent domicile and residence in the U.S. In other words, I believe Trump will argue that the parents in that case were permanent residents of the United States and therefore their child born in the U.S. could be considered a U.S. citizen under the 14th Amendment. However, his executive order applies to children born of parents who are not permanent residents, which is why he made his executive order, if you notice, apply to children born to mothers who are either out of status or here on a temporary non-immigrant visa. And I also want to be clear and clear up some confusion about this executive order. Even if it is implemented, it will not apply retroactively to people who were already born in the U.S. Parenthetically, I had a 40-year-old U.S. citizen who was traumatized over this executive order because although he was born in the U.S., at the time he was born, his parents were out of status. But after he reached his 21st birthday, he petitioned them, and now everybody is a U.S. citizen. So he was afraid that this executive order might strip them all of U.S. citizenship. I assure you, that is not the case. That won't happen because the executive order would apply only to children born after the date of the executive order, not before. In my opinion, I believe that once this case gets to the Supreme Court, I think that they will uphold the concept of birthright citizenship, as has been the practice since the enactment of the 14th Amendment in 1868, and certainly for over 125 years since their 1898 case of Wong Kim R. Now, I will continue following developments on this case and posting videos on birthright citizenship, as well as writing articles on this topic as developments arise. Therefore, please make sure to subscribe to this channel and, of course, like and share this video with other concerned people. I am Michael Gurfinkel, and thank you for watching U.S. Immigration TV.